accepted. However, the spark that started the movement had to be in 1873, when 4 Sikh students of a mission school of Amritsar had the desire to convert to Christianity. Even though their families and members of the community were able to explain to them not to perform such a deed, they were reminded of this again when pundits would begin to lecture against the Khalsa in favor of Hinduism or Christianity. In order to prevent more of our youth from straying away, an organization with the goal of keeping Sikhi alive had to be formed. Thus, on July 30th, 1873, by the efforts of Sardar Thakur Singh and Governor Vikram Singh and a few other leading Sikhs, the first Singh Sabha meeting was held. One of the main hurdles at the time was that, like most gatherings, when people get together to fight a force such as this, emotions would run high. The earlier struggles included the 3 main leaders, Sardar Thakur Singh, Governor Vikram Singh, and Baba Khem Singh, from agreeing on various matters and the correct approach to solve them. In relation to a positive influence, one can agree that Professor Gurmukh Singh exhibited one of the greatest positive forces on the movement as a whole. He came during the time the Sabha itself was struggling and realized its weaknesses. He realized in order to prevent our community from falling astray, first we need to educate them. Christian and educational centers were being formed, and instead of complaining about this, he learned from their good actions and reciprocated with our own youth. In 1876, he drafted a constructive program for the progress of the Bump, including national literature in the Punjabi language, educating Sikhs in the professional and religious fields, and bringing them to the mainstream of Sikhi, and all this, most importantly, without the confrontation of the British government. He realized at the time mixing religion and politics, when things were so delicate, would not have been a good idea. Fortunately, by 1877, the teaching of the Punjabi language was accepted in Punjab University, the first step towards reform. Other than educating our youth in schools, the Sabha movement began to educate the community as well by administrating the publication of various Punjabi papers in order to keep the Punjabi language alive. However, I think more than any one person, the greatest influence on the Sikh Sabha movement came from education. Aristotle had said, "All who have meditated on the art of governing mankind have been convinced the fate of the empire depends on the education of the youth." Conversely, the fate of Sikhi ultimately depended on educating our youth. We cannot simply tell them to be Sikhs, but explain why and educate them on the manner. When it comes to negative influences, even a negative influence can be taken in a positive light. There will always be good and bad deeds in this world. However, if we look upon a negative influence, it will be so. But if we simply change our own perspective, these adverse pressures can be constructive models to be learned from. For example, there could have been many negative influences during this time, whether it be the British, the Sikh people forgetting their morals, politicians. However, I think the main negative influence was ego and negative thoughts. This is what caused the Sabha of Lahore and the Singh Sabha of Amritsar to split in the first place. Instead of looking at it as ideals, Bhai Khem Singh looked at the fact that Bhai Gurmukh Singh was the son of a cook and not descendant of a guru. He deemed him to be unworthy. It was this ego that drove people into thinking it was acceptable for some people to be treated better than others because of their backgrounds and not their goals. Thus, the negative influence was not a group of people, however, negative values that were festering in people's minds. This eventually led to the split of Khalsa Divan Amritsar and Lahore with their own respective roles. I think the ultimate goal of the Singh Sabha movement was to educate people, and in the end, despite the setbacks, they were able to do so. Again, I go back to my original point. The Singh Sabha movement was a revival of Sikh ideals. These ideals had existed before. In this case, religion was always there. It was not hiding or shielding away. Everything was presented before an individual, and at the end of the day, it is up to that individual to take the leap of faith. Leap, and the landing will appear on its own. It is said, we cannot hold a torch to another's path without brightening our own. The main goal of the movement was to identify the Sikhs as a community strong as one, teaching others but also learning from them as well. There will always be setbacks and problems within anything. This is just a fact of life. However, at the end of the day, we must not forget who we are. If you compare these times with the times from the Sikh Symposium movement, Bhai Gurmukh Singh was very inspired to publish the first newspaper in Punjabi and to enlighten minds. However, if we look at today, we have hundreds of newspapers, but how many exactly cover important topics? I don't think that it can be said we're better or worse off in the events leading up to the Sikh Symposium movement or the time of the Gurus. There will always be triumphs and failures, successes and setbacks. The main thing is to learn from these and not lose faith in our religion. I would like to end with a quote: "Committing yourself is not a way of finding out who you are. A man finds his identity by identifying. A man's identity is not best thought of as the way in which he is separated from his fellows, but by the way in which he is united with them." If we are to learn anything from this movement, it is to stay united and to commit to our faith. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.